The Doloriad by Missouri Williams. So this book is probably the newest addition to my collection. It was published earlier this year in 2022 and is the debut novel of its author. I was first made aware of it thanks to the channel Travel Through Stories, who did a review of it a couple months back, which you should definitely check out if this sounds like something that is of interest to you. As for me, this book just sounded so intriguing. It was something that I was very curious to read. And so I did. And man, oh man, am I glad that I did, because the Doloriad was a stunning experience. This is quite possibly the finest debut novel that I have read, or at least in quite some time. Missouri Williams is a phenomenal wordsmith, and this book was a stellar experience to read. So, what is the Doloriad about? Well, it is a post apocalyptic tale told in a highly literary style and which provides a grotesque twist to the old post apocalyptic formula. The setting is somewhere in Czechoslovakia after an unspecified environmental catastrophe which has apparently killed off the entire human race except for a bare handful of survivors. There is an unnamed woman referred to only as the matriarch and her brother. They are attempting to restart the human race from their own loins, and they have a boatload of incestuous inbred children in an attempt to repopulate the earth to very mixed and increasingly dismal results. And so this book is just it's a plotless work. There is no real plot here. That just kind of chronicles their hard scrabble existence in their encampment, where they are trying to eke out lives for themselves. They also watch a television show. It's a very weird book. That's one thing that you should know up front, is that the Doloriad is a weird ass book. Not only because of the kind of grotesque, inbreeding motif, but also because the children of the camp watch a television show, a fictitious television show called Get Aquinas in Here, which apparently features the um, old medieval saint Thomas Aquinas doing stuff in various scenarios. I don't know, it's weird, but that's in there. There's also a peripheral character called the school teacher. Many of these characters don't have names. Then the school teacher provides lessons to the matriarch's brood and attempts to instill some sense of lost civility in them, to largely negative results. Um, but at the onset of this story, the matriarch has sent out one of her daughters, Dolores, our quasi-titular character, who is very large, also has no legs, and is mentally retarded, I believe. And so she has had her dumped out in the middle of the woods as something of an offering to another conjectural band of survivors, which she has had a vision of, in which more than likely do not exist. However, Dolores crawls all the way back to their camp, and as a result of her actions, the matriarch's hold on her children's lives begin to weaken, and the order of the camp begins to fray. That's pretty much it in terms of plot. It's weird. It doesn't go in any kind of recognizable direction. I don't really think there's any kind of end goal in mind here, and that's well evinced by the ending, which was the one aspect of this book which did let me down. The ending to this book I was not a fan of, because it did that. It was kind of like it did a gravity's rainbow and just kind of spiraled off into nothing. And I didn't really like that. Of course, with this kind of work that has no plot, you're not really probably going to get so much of an ending as you are just a stopping point, because this book really does just kind of stop. But other than that, this book was a truly extraordinary experience, or at least to me. So the writing on display in this book is some of the finest I have read in quite some time. It is gorgeous to behold. There are sentences in here that are worded so delectably that you really it's just a pleasure to read this. There is also a crap ton of words in here that you're probably not going to know. It's kind of McCarthy-esque a little bit, although not really in terms of this. The way the sentences are structured do not resemble his work, but the word choice here is kind of comparable to that because uh, she uses a lot of diction that most people will probably not know, a lot of archaic and obscure words, but it is not purple prose. This writing is gorgeous, but it's also very clear and provides a very good window onto the events that it is describing. It is truly one of the best written books that I've read in quite some time. Also, it is written in blocks of text. The entire book almost is just almost one unbroken block of text. It does not indent or start new lines for dialogue. The dialogue is just tail ended after every line. There is almost no paragraph breaks or indentations. And I don't really know how I felt about that, but it didn't really hinder me, so it's whatever. And the characters in this book are memorable, and more so than I thought they would be, because it kind of does a stream of consciousness kind of thing. It jumps around into the heads of a lot of different characters, and sometimes it just segues out of one character into another character without really making it clear that it's doing it until you're there. But if you can get the hang of it, it's a very deft rendering of these characters because they all have distinct personalities, and I was able to really remember who was who. You have Dolores, you have Agatha, you have Jan, you have Jacob. All these kids, these inbred kids. That the matriarch and her brother have had in their desperate bid to resurrect the human race. But the characters in this I found very well done, and I think that this book was a very well-rounded experience from the writing to the characters to just the premise, which is, as I said, grotesque, but really engrossing. Now, as to the thematic content of this book, this is where it gets a little bit more nebulous, but I think this book did have a bit to say. Um, I've seen some reviews that said that this book is just basically nonsense, that it's just a bunch of well written gibberish that doesn't really say anything. I don't really think that it is. I'm not going to, give any concrete pronouncements on what I think this book really means, but I think there is some really good commentary here about humanity and about the endeavor of life and whether it's all really worth it. So to begin with, let's analyze the title. The title of the book is called the Doloriad, which is named after the character in this book of Dolores. But what it's doing is it's referencing the term Jeremiad, which is referenced in turn in the book in a couple places, I believe. And if you don't know what a Jeremiad is, it is at its base kind of a text or screed that prophesizes the downfall of a certain society or civilization due to their wicked ways or whatnot. It's based around you can trace it back. The origin of the term comes from the biblical prophet Jeremiah, but at its heart, it means a text that is geared around predicting the downfall of a certain society or civilization. And that's exactly what we're witnessing in the Doloriad. We're witnessing the downfall of the matriarch's civilization, her inbred civilization that has sprung from her incestuous loins. And yeah, if you don't know, inbreeding is not a viable way to maintain a population, or at least not inbreeding of that level of intimacy. As the pharaohs have taught us, you can only mate direct siblings to each other for so many goes before those genes just crap the heck out. Trust me, I live in Arkansas. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to inbreeding. My DNA is held together with Gorilla Glue and silly putty. I just, but anyway, so the even though the matriarch has struggled so hard and birthed so many children who have in turn mated to each other and birthed so many more children, the genes are wearing down. The children are getting more and more deformed and more uh, mentally retarded with every generation, and so it looks like humanity is on its last legs. However, the book kind of asks the question, is that such a bad thing? What I think that this book is about at its heart is kind of an interrogation of the very condition of life and asking the reader, does there come a point where the endeavors to maintain life entail such a debasement that it invalidates the entire enterprise? Does there come a point in which the validity of life is nullified by the degradation that is inherent in its upkeep? Because that's kind of what we're seeing here. We try, usually post apocalyptic stories are kind of triumphant stories about a small band of survivors, like Stephen King's The Stand or something, rebuilding civilization and repopulating the earth and hopefully building something better. That is not going to happen here. The children of the matriarch are becoming, and the descendants of those children are becoming increasingly more, well, unviable. But also, they are ignorant, they're illiterate, they're incredibly violent and just depraved. And so it kind of asks you the question, is this what you would really want? Is this worth it? Is the human race so worth it that this is what it takes to keep it going? Because I don't really think it is. Like the book is so grotesque and just kind of icky that you're kind of just like, stop, just go extinct already. It's okay. You gave it your best try, but you can hang it up now. And other people may not have that reaction, but I think that's the reaction that she's trying to, get out of you, is that maybe this isn't worth it so much in the long run. After all, the root word of the name Dolores, and subsequently the root word of the title of this book, the Doloriad, is the word dolor, which means sorrow or heartache or melancholy or whatnot. And so the atmosphere that this book evokes is one of dolor, of sorrow. It's grotesque, as I've said, and things do not stand to get better. They stand to only get worse. The matriarch was holding this society together just with her willpower, because she was kind of like a cult leader over her children, the products of her incest with her brother. But now that Dolores has defied her by coming back to camp when she was supposed to stay in the woods, it shows that the matriarch can be defied and that the children are now kind of running wild. The kids, to paraphrase The Who, the kids are not all right. And so this is what tenuous society they had constructed now begins to implode even more. And that's kind of where the book wraps up. As I said, the ending was kind of a disappointment to me because it didn't really end. It just stopped. And the stuff with Thomas Aquinas, the television show that seemingly predicts aspects of their life, I don't really know if this is meant to be taken like magical realism, because this kind of book is kind of nebulous in the way you can take it. Like it can be taken just as like a fairly realistic story of people trying to repopulate the earth through inbreeding after an apocalypse, but there are also elements of it that are just kind of strange and seemingly impossible. And so I think it kind of can lend itself to a magical realist interpretation. But all I know is that this book really did floor me. I'm so glad I picked this book up. To rate the Doloriad, I'm going to give this an A, not an A plus, because that ending did irk me because it just stopped. It didn't even have really an ending. It just stopped. But other than that, I don't really have any complaints with this book. It was mouth-wateringly written. The prose in this was, again, some of the finest I've read in quite some time. Missouri Williams is one hell of a prose stylist, and her writing in this book was just chef's kiss. It was that good. The characters, as I said, were memorable. I was able to tell them apart. They each kind of had distinct personalities, and I understood them more or less. And yeah, this book was just that good. I'm so glad I picked it up. And if it sounds like something that you would also be interested in, definitely give it a go because, as I said, this is a debut novel. And I think it's important to support debut novelists if they put out something of this quality and of this level of intrigue, because this book is, if nothing else, intriguing. So, yeah, The Doloriad by Missouri Williams. Have you read The Doloriad? I'm willing to bet most of you probably haven't because this book is really new, but if you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I have said about it here today. And if you have not read The Doloriad, I could recommend this highly. Now, I know a lot of people may be turned off by its premise and the nastiness of some of it, but if you can get past that, there is a lot here to unpack. It's very dense, kind of opaque, but it really is just a great reading experience. And again, it's probably one of the best books I've read this year. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to like, subscribe, help the channel out a little bit. I would greatly appreciate it. And until next time, peace.